Hey guys, it's RiceLegend here, and I'm bringing you today an Akali versus Jax guide. I'll be going over some things like the ruins, how to really play the matchup, and some general builds. So let's get started. So the runes to run, basically there's kind of two setups. There's a more aggressive setup and there's more of like a passive setup. The more aggressive setup really consists of Conqueror, and this is where you think you can maybe snowball against Jax. You're a better player than Jax, and you can kind of snowball off of this and carry your team and deal more damage. Um, let's talk about this startup. So in this a more offensive startup, you want to start Conquer as the keystone, and then you go into Presence of Mind. Presence of Mind is a necessary rune because you get that energy to help with your Q. The Q, after getting nerfed, it costs a lot of energy, and having that extra energy per takedown, you get up to 50 energy, which is 5 takedowns, and then you get additional energy as you get takedowns. And this is really big for Akali. This is a must-have. So the next one is Tenacity, and basically your options here are either Tenacity or Alacrity. You never go Bloodline. Alacrity is more of that attack speed. Yeah, it helps you CS and it helps you auto attack more. But the huge thing here is you want to run Tenacity because it really helps with Jax's stun and any additional other CC that the enemy team may have. And Alacrity doesn't really help you as much because you want to weave their passive in and out, so you don't really utilize it as much. That's why you don't really see people building attack speed on Akali. So for the last one, you want to go to Coup de Grace, and here you can switch this in for last stand depending on what you kind of feel. You never want to go cut down, but you want to go Coup de Grace here because basically if you're full HP, the enemy's low, you deal more damage. But if you think you're going to be fighting a lot more closer skirmishes, Last Stand might actually be better for you. It's really on what you feel and what you think is better. And you want to go in the domination tree. You want to go Taste of Blood or Ravenous Hunter. So the reason is you want Taste of Blood is that you get that extra sustain to really help you in lane, and it scales with AD and AP. You can switch Taste of Blood out for Sudden Impact if you want to play for a more aggressive playstyle, but I wouldn't recommend it because as fights get closer and closer, that extra sustain actually makes a difference. And you want to go Ravenous Hunter here because you want to get that extra healing, and it scales really well into the late game. And you don't want to run Ultimate Hunter here because Akali's cooldown after getting the buff, her cooldown's already low enough, so you don't need that additional CDR on her ulti. For the little minor runes, I would go Adaptive Force for the offense and the flex, and mainly this is because you don't really utilize the attack speed as much, and going armor and match resist isn't gonna really help you as much. And same thing with the CDR. And having that extra either AD or AP adaptive force can make or break whether or not you win a good trade versus Jax. And then the defense is kind of an obvious. The armor's going to help you against Jax's autos, and it's also going to help you with kind of minion damage. Let's talk about the more passive style versus Jax. You can run Fleet Footwork here, and that's kind of similar to the previous setup, except for Conquer, we're running Fleet Footwork. Fleet Footwork is really good because when you get an auto off, you can run out and you can trigger that passive ring, and it allows you to kind of weave in your passive easier. And having that extra sustain really helps you if you make a really bad trade and you screw up. Getting that extra health can help you stay in lane longer and so you don't fall behind. Presence of Mind again for the Ruin, and you really need Presence of Mind. I would not pick any other Ruin here. Presence of Mind is a must have, and the same reason for Tenacity and Coup de Grace. But let's talk about the secondary. We go Resolve here, and we go Bone Plating, so that if Jax E's and then he jumps on you with Q, and then he autos or pops the E, you're actually going to be taking a lot less damage, and Jax can't really 100 to 0 you. You want to go Overgrowth here because Overgrowth scales into mid to late game, and once you get that extra HP bonus, it's going to be harder for the enemy team to burst you. The same reasoning for the minors, the offense, flex, and defensive. You want to go to the offense adaptive force, the flex adaptive force, so that you can get that additional AD, AP. And then for the defense, it's just that armor. It's the same reasoning. So these are the runes I would recommend for running with Jax. You should use them as I recommend, but you can switch things here in and out based off of your playstyle. For the general item build order, you gotta go Hextech Gunblade first. You rush Hextech Gunblade. If I could only have one item and never build a single other item on Akali, you gotta go Gunblade. That's just the healing, the damage, the burst from the active is just so good. Your second item is going to be either Sorcerer Boots, Ninja Tabby, or Murky Treads. Sorcerer Boots, those are more for like snowballing. If the enemy doesn't have a lot of damage, not a lot of CC, and you need to deal more damage, Sorcerer Boots are perfect, getting that extra 18 magic penetration. So Ninja Tabby is really good against Jax because Jax auto attacks a lot. You want to get tabbies if Jax is super fed and ahead, or if the enemy ADC is really far ahead. If they have anyone that kind of autos a lot, Ninja Tabby is perfect. Against an AD heavy team, Ninja Tabby is really good too, but if you're really snowballing against Jax, you don't really need the tabbies, you can go Sword. But if I would say Jax is ahead, you want to definitely go tabbies. Murky Treads is on here as an option because it helps with Jax's stun, but it also is more helpful towards if the enemy has a laner like Twisted Fate, where you're going to get ganked a lot and he's going to deal a lot of magic damage to you and CC you. If the enemy has like a Nautilus support, things like that, like these long duration stuns, roots, and things like that, that will definitely get you killed if you don't have that extra tenacity reduction. Though having the tenacity from the precision tree is helpful, additional Merc Treads on top of that really helps you survive those CC heavy comps. So the third item you would get is either Leandries or Morello's. Leandries does a lot of damage. That 10% extra damage, that burn based off of max HP, having that HP, that AP from the item itself, it's crazy good. The piece to it as well, Haunting Guys, gives you that 10% bonus as well. So as you're slowly building it, you still get those damage benefits. The other third item you could potentially go is Morello Nomicon, and this is actually a very snowbally item, and it's really good for comps that have a lot of healing. The reason I say it's snowbally because a piece of it is Oblivion Orb, which actually gives you 15 magic pen, and that's pretty big early game. If you stack that with sword pens, you're basically dealing true damage to ADCs. You want to go Morello's if your team doesn't get Grievous Wounds like Bramble Vest, Executioner's Calling, things like that, because Morello's is a very expensive item, and it doesn't give you as much damage as Leandries would. Morello's is kind of like if you really need the Grievous Wounds and the enemy has like a Soraka, a Yumi, a Sona, all of those really healing heavy champions. The fourth item would be Zionist Hourglass. This item is just perfection. You get the stasis to stall out fights. You get the armor that really helps you. Even like the Seeker's Arm Guard, if you stack up that, it's really good. You get the CDR from that Fiendish Codex. And it's really good. And you can also have a stopwatch. And all of these components that build up to it are usable in the mid game. And they really help you survive and deal more damage. The item in general is very good for stalling, deals a lot of damage, and has a lot of survivability. Your fifth item you want to get is Void Staff. Void Staff is kind of the item that if the enemy builds a lot of MR, you really need this item. Otherwise, you'll do no magic damage, especially since Akali's E does magic damage now. Void Staff makes you hit harder if the enemy has a lot of magic resist because you penetrate that. The reason I say to get Void Staff as a fifth item is because Jax usually will maybe have like Merc Treads at this time of the game. He'll also be building towards Death Dance as you're getting your fifth item. He's probably going Death Dance as like maybe a fourth or fifth item. Having that magic resist, maybe the enemy team has Hex Shrinker, Jax may have Hex Shrinker. Void Staff really penetrates that magic resist. And the sixth item would be Death Cap. Death Cap, the reasoning is because you already have all these AP items. Getting that additional 40 AP from Death Cap's unique passive is huge. You get that extra AP. On top of that, Death Cap already gives a lot of AP, so you'll just be dealing a lot of damage. So that's kind of the general item build order. Let's just talk about some basic things about the Jax matchup. Let's talk about Akali's E versus Jax E. Jax E is that little ring around him that where he stuns you, and Akali's E is kind of the shuriken that you throw and you dash backwards, and then you can recast it on a marked target to dash to it. This is important, and you want to save your lane in lane your E for Jax's E. I have an example of a video here, and basically where I will be using my E to dodge Jax's E. So if you see here, I hit level 2, and I already know Jax started E level 1, and I saved my E for his E. The minute he uses his E, you can punish him severely. Like that. Basically, he jumps in, I E away, and then after his E wears off, if I could replay this here, Jax will E, and then what I will do is I will immediately E, right? Immediately E when he E's, and then his E wears off, and I can just E to dash back in and win the trade. Basically, look at that. He's very low. I'm almost full HP, and I have potions left over. So let's continue. So let's talk about some Akali Laning versus Jax. Some general things you'd want to keep in mind is Jax is most likely running Conqueror and his passive stacks up. You don't want to overtrade with him when he has fully stacked Conqueror because chances are you'll be out of energy, and his fully stacked Conqueror needs to get a bunch of healing from it, and you'll get a bunch of adaptive force from it. You also want to be careful from his passive because he's going to get a lot of attack speed, so he's going to get a lot of autos off on you if it's fully stacked. You want to not trade into his E and be careful with his E. Try to E out, try to shroud, and try to be aware of your energy. If you're out of energy, chances are Jax is going to go in on you. If your shroud's on cooldown, Jax will most likely just jump into you and try and fight you. Let's take a look at some examples of how laning phase goes for me and how I recommend you play laning phase. If you know your E is on cooldown and you're trading with Jax, so here he's under tower, I'm basically just pressuring him. Whenever he walks up to CS, I'm going to smack him with my Q, and then my E's on CD, so the minute when he jumps on me, I need to shroud. I have to shroud, because if I don't shroud, he's gonna stun me, and he's gonna get a bunch of free autos off on me, and my E's on CD, so I can't react with that. The minute I use my shroud, and he stuns me, I can basically trade with him for free, and I'm not gonna take that much damage. So let's see another point in the game where I am level 5, and I basically am going to trade with them again. In lane, you want to look for opportunities where your E and W cooldown's up, and then you can save your E to basically E out of his E. You never want to offensively E into him or shroud to chase him down, because he's going to outtrade you always. So here, Jax uses Q to jump in, but here I'm missing my Q, but that's fine. I used my shroud to make a good trade and get a Q and auto off, but I kind of back off here. But if you saw there, I just slowly waited for him to E, and then I E'd out. So he knows to go in on me. This is what I was saying, when your shroud's on cooldown, he can just jump in on you. But then he E'd, so I let him step up to me, then I just E away. So then I immediately can just take the E back in and win the trade, because he actually doesn't have his E or Q again because he used it. Next part. Akali versus Jax level 6. If you both are even in lane and neither of you have really snowballed, Akali really shines at level 6. You do have to be careful of Jax. You cannot misplay and get stunned and get hit for free, and you don't want to let him stack up his passive and then trade you with it. So let's take a look at a level 7 post 6 1v1 versus Jax. We're pretty even in gold right now, and I don't have Gunblade yet. And what's currently happening is the wave is frozen towards my side. And what I'm doing is I'm waiting for him to walk up so I can make a trade with him when he tries to farm. So right here, Jax immediately E's, and I make the mistake of E'ing too soon because he has a little bit of a time frame to actually recast his E. So I see that he immediately jumps on me, and what I immediately do is I actually shroud because I know I'll be stunned. And if you look here, when he stuns me, he doesn't get any free autos off because I actually am shrouded and I'm invisible and he actually doesn't see me. So once that stun wears off, I know that he used his Q and his E already, so that he basically can only auto me and I can actually all in here since I still have my second E, and I still have my Q and my R's coming up soon. So I decided all in here, and you basically get a free kill if Jax misuses his E. So some general notes about Jax is avoid getting stunned by his E. If you're going to get stunned by his E, you gotta use your Shroud. You gotta use your E to dash out of his E if you can, and he scales really hard. You gotta win early to mid game, or otherwise once he gets a bunch of items, he's gonna be very difficult to kill with his ulti, and you can't really all in him and burst him down. He outscales in the sense that he's better in team fights once he gets more items, and he splits better later in the game. So that was basically my matchup guide for Jax versus Akali. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the matchup versus Jax. Let me know what you guys think about the guide, and let me know what champion you guys want to see next in the comments below. If there's any additional feedback, feel free to let me know. Don't forget to follow me at RiceLegend. I will be having more additional content like this, and I do a lot of educational Akali streams in High Diamond Elo on NA. Thank you guys. Have a good one.